Hmm.
I always make a face when it starts recording. Welcome, everybody, to the Ideas Panel. Joining me are a vast number of people who I'm going to get them to introduce themselves again. But I'm going to ask the serious question that gets asked to all writers, I think, every single time is where do you get your ideas from? Now, careful, because I think this question is often answered very badly. So I'm raising the stakes here.
And
So,
it's usually where people grow the authors. They don't out loud because a genuine member of the audience has asked, but often it's the question that authors have been asked so often
yeah.
they've come up with something new.
Well, I think I think it's repeatedly asked because it's answered badly. But well, let's introduce ourselves. Morgan, you start.
Oh, okay. Yes, I have, and yes, I've written. I write women's fiction, crime fiction, and books about writing. So writing guides and diaries and things like that. And I have more ideas than I can cope with. So I could fill the hour, but I'm going to be very good because I've told myself off in every session so far for chipping in and asking questions, and I will keep an eye on the chat. But yes, I get my ideas from everywhere. I'm one of these people who has a dog, as Eric does, and I think others of you have, where if I'm walking along with my iPod, still love the old iPod, in my ears, and I hear a juicy argument, looks like a juicy argument, instead of what looks like I'm turning my volume up, I'm actually pausing it because I want to hear what's going on. So for me, ideas are everywhere.
Going along my top row, Eric is next.
Hi, Eric. I'm, I think, the lone U.S. writer here. Science fiction. I've written three books, or at least I've written three books that will see the light of day. Currently working on a fourth book that will be fantasy. I'm similar to Morgan. Ideas are the easy part. I think execution's the hard part. I get them everywhere. I have an RSS reader every day. I'm reading a little bit of science, a little bit of history, and an idea will pop in. Um, Also iPod, listening to podcasts. The Rest is History is an awesome podcast that I love, and I'm really into alternate history. So ideas come from there, and I have a text editor stuffed with ideas that maybe someday I'll execute on them.
Graeme is next.
Hi, I've got three books out, each of them currently in different genres. I'm saying currently, the existing ones aren't going to change. But moving forward, I'm going to be focused largely on crime. But obviously, the fact that there are different genres, that does mean that the sources of where those stories have come from has been quite varied. Or maybe it's not obvious. I don't know.
Alan is next on my list.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I have four books out. I've dabbled in a little bit of horror, but mainly I write in a kind of subgenre of fantasy, which I've kind of titled myself. It's probably called something else really, but called delusional fantasy, where you have an unreliable narrator, and where you're not quite sure whether the events that are happening to that main character, whether they actually are really happening, or whether it's part of a psychosis. And that's because I had a mental health breakdown in 2000, where I had psychotic symptoms. I think that's where I get a lot of inspiration, and probably why I mix kind of fantasy elements into kind of real world kind of situations.
Paul.
Hi there, everyone. My name's Paul Gitcham. Yeah, I write. I originally wrote the DCI Warren Jones series that numbered 13 entries. I then did a standalone called The Aftermath, and then upcoming in the next couple of months, I've got a brand new Coventry-based police procedural series called Fox and Kennard. So two detectives. My ideas. Basically, for the most part, my wife and I watch an unhealthy amount of true crime. And I've got quite good. I'm actually right-handed, but because of the way we tend to sit on the sofa, my wife is usually on my right arm. I can now type ideas that I spot in OneNote on my phone with my left hand. I've got quite good at that. But just recently, we moved back up to Coventry, which is where the new books are going to be set. And I just don't understand why there aren't more books set in Coventry when you look at the city's history and the fact that it's a decent sized city with very high crime rate. Why is there not more crime books set in Coventry?
And
So I'm now getting inspiration from Coventry.
And everybody is sent there. Everybody's sent to Coventry.
Well, this is it. It gives me lots of puns.
I don't know if this will mean anything to Eric, but we say if someone's done something they shouldn't have done, we send them to Coventry.
Is that because Australia's full?
They obviously behave well.
Predated Australia. We hadn't found Australia when they first started sending people here. Well, that gives me a load of potential puns for articles I might want to write.
Exactly.
And finally, last but not least, Tony.
Yeah, hi, Tony Forder. I'm crime writer and thriller writer, mainly crime. My most popular series is D.I. Jimmy Bliss. There's 14 novels there, and because I usually write 2 storylines in each, that's quite a lot of stories to think of. Ideas, I've been thinking about this over this period, knowing I was coming on this panel, and I thought, I don't really know the origins of most of my stories. They come to me in scenes, just a scene, which I write down, or I hold in my mind for a little while just to see if it lingers, because that way I usually know if it's worth keeping. What I want to do is just give you 3 examples of ones where the origins I did know. And oddly enough, they were 3 consecutive books. So I was, someone mentioned true crime. I was looking through a true crime website and clicked on this thing about a guy called Ken McElroy in the States. And essentially he was a small town bully and villain. And the townspeople got fed up with him, and he wound up shot dead one day. And when they were investigating, they found that there were several firearms used. And there were about 30, 35 of the townspeople watching and witnessing. No one was ever prosecuted. Essentially, the town got their own back on the bully. Well, I thought, well, I can't write about that because it's been done. But what I'm very keen on is looking at the aftermath of things. So I wrote a book called The Death of Justice, which is about something very similar, but set in England. But my story was about the aftermath, what might happen afterwards. And then that way I introduced the crime itself. While I was editing that book, I'd started another one. But I was watching the TV, and there was it was a news show, local news show, and it was about county lines drug mules. And there was a 15-year-old girl talking, her face all pixelated out. And I thought, what an interesting story she must have. And immediately I thought, that's my next book. I've got to write about her. Not her specifically, but her situation. That turned out to be a book called Endless Silent Scream. But probably the weirdest is that in amongst my notes, which I keep, I've got loads of, I'm handwritten, not digital. I write all kinds of notes, and I also keep ideas for titles. So I was browsing through one day, and I noticed that I'd written down at some point a title called 15 Coffins. And when I looked at it, I thought, well, what did I mean by that? And then I thought, is that 15 separate individual killings, or is that a mass killing? And I started thinking about that. And that turned into a whole novel just based on a stray title that I'd written down at some point, couldn't even remember writing down. But that's where that just sparked an idea. And I just kept asking myself questions based on that title, 15 Coffins. So, yeah, ideas literally come from anywhere, I think.
You've all proved my theory as to why this question is asked and answered badly, because I think it's a cart before the horse question. You know, you don't say, I'm going to be a writer, where do I get my ideas from? You have an idea. It demands to be written. You write it, you're a writer. I think the ideas come first. And I find it really strange, particularly I found this in the film world. People will say, oh, we want to make a film. Can we have some ideas? And you think that's wrong. You have the idea, you'll make the film, you write the book or whatever.
Yeah.
And you would agree with me on that one, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's I started writing when I was a kid, and that I didn't do that because I wanted to be a writer. I did that because I had an idea of something to write and I wanted to write it down.
I think the best writers, the ones with the long careers that are successful, that continue, keep on going. They keep on having the ideas and then writing the books. And whilst we understand that when you become a commercial writer, particularly if you're under contract and stuff, there is the compulsion to, oh, we got another book, what ideas do I use? Actually, most of these, the most successful writers will have that list of ideas that are waiting to be turned into a book. And often it's a case of choosing the idea that already exists, which one is the best one to use next, as opposed to scrabbling around looking for an idea.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't need another big idea. I need lots of little ideas to flesh the big ideas out. But don't need any more big ideas, certainly.
No, plenty of those. And then there's the big distracting idea that comes out of nowhere, isn't there? When you're just about to start writing something, you go, oh, I want to write this now.
If you take a scan of a person's brain, you'll see electricity sort of sparking all over the place. And that's, it develops, it moves around and so forth. And that's the human brain having ideas. I think the writer's trick is to spot you've had an idea and write it down. That's the key.
Yeah, it's also, I think, there's also an element of that where you have an idea, you write it down and then think, did I read that somewhere before? Or is that a book I'm remembering? I'm always a little bit dubious as to where that idea came from and whether I've just snaffled it from something I've seen on TV a week ago. So I'm a little bit cautious, which is why I tend to let the things I write down sit a little while before going back to them and then trying to remember where the idea came from, or think, have I heard anything similar? Because I think one of the sort of big curses when you're writing a lot is that you might write something and think, oh, yeah, I do remember that now. I read that in a book. Scrap that.
You never can write it the same way.
Terry Pratchett had this theory of the inspiration, a fundamental particle of an idea that goes through the brain, and then you've had the idea. But the particle is traveling back in time, which is why when it goes through your brain, you've had it first. Or, of course, it goes back in time so someone else has it before you.
That's me.
Yeah, I don't think I could sell that to the public.
Yeah, like Tony, I have notebooks and Word document with all the ideas, and I have to write down, if I found it from another source other than it's just popped into my brain, I have to write down where it came from, because I have such a terrible memory that I don't want to include something else that you'd have to copy it out verbatim, because there are, and I've come up with an idea. And literally a week, I just dotted it down, and literally a week later, there was an episode of Medium with Patricia Arquette that had exactly that plot.
Yeah.
And then you think, well, I can't use it now, but it's how you use it. Barbara Cartland had 700 and something books. Boy meets girl, they can't get together. Oh, actually, they do like each other. They can get together happy ever after.
Yeah, there's always a different way of telling the same story.
Morgan, you said you've got a very bad memory. Quick show of hands from the panel. Who else has got a very bad memory? Because I think if we spend all of our time coming up with original ideas, we're not storing information quite as well as other people. It's our brains are designed to put this stuff out rather than take it in.
Yeah, well, when your head gets full up, doesn't it? So you've got to purge it occasionally.
They do say you have something like an 8-second instant memory. That if you don't put it in your brain, it's a bit like hereafter. You go upstairs, or what was I hereafter? You knew at the bottom of the stairs what you were going upstairs for, but within 8 seconds, it's gone. I suppose it depends on how important it is to us. I can speak to WIs I normally get 45 minutes, so I could just carry on speaking all day, because it's something I'm passionate about and I have knowledge on and I have experience on. I think if we're interested in something enough, then it sticks. Yeah.
One of the things I thought was interesting, you talked about how the worry about using the idea that's already been seen. One thing I've noticed is that in my ideas file, and somebody else touched upon this, the idea that you watch true crime and you can't tell that story because it's already been told. What I find is that actually I don't write down this happened in this episode of 24 Hours of Police Custody. Instead, it'll be the idea is catalyzed by something that happened in that episode of 24 Hours of Police Custody. I don't write down where I get it from. And often I'll look back at it and I can see no linear link between what I was probably watching and what the idea, as I wrote down in my notes, was. And I think that then is another thing. It acts as a catalyst, not as a let's write that down. I mean, I'd write some facts down. I mean, sometimes you just hear a little snippet of really interesting information about there was a thing about mobile phones a couple of years back, and I hadn't realized that the mobile phone records why the phone turned off. Did it turn off because the battery went flat or because the user decided to turn it off? That's actually recorded. And I thought, that could come in useful one day when my forensic expert is looking at a phone. Oh, did it run out of battery? No, he actually turned it off deliberately before. Oh, right, so he's lying. Those things you write down verbatim, but other things, it's just, oh, okay, that's gave me a feeling. And then I follow the feeling.
I have a scene in Hitman Sam. There's 2 novellas up there in Hitman Sam where he's training to be a hitman. And I just read something, and I think it was in a newspaper, where a young teenager had got a gun in America, in McDonald's, other fast food outlets are available, where they'd gone into the toilets and they have these polystyrene squares of ceiling so you can fix the lights and so on. And somebody who had got the gun went in there, lifted up the panel, put the gun there, put the panel back, and then the next person who was to get the gun went in there, lifted the panel, got the gun. And so that ended up in a scene in Hitman Sam.
I was a Godfather.
In a quiet, leafy... Oh, was it? In a quiet, leafy county near Northampton.
Godfather 2 or Godfather? I'm not that much crazy about it as your typical American, but Al Pacino. It was the old-fashioned toilets with the tank above the toilet. And
hide it somewhere in the toilet
and that's where the gun was hid.
Or in the cistern, put it in a plastic bag, put it in the cistern so it doesn't get damaged.
I've seen that in a number of things.
Yeah. It is weird inspiration, okay? But my wife decided one year just before Christmas that she gets one of these couples massages, where you go together and just have a massage done. I'd never had one done before. It was lovely. But afterwards, I'm lying there, they've got the whale music playing and the smelly candles and stuff, and you're just chilling out. And it just suddenly occurred to me that if somebody walked through that door with a knife, I'm screwed. There's nothing I could do about it. Anyway, I got a book out of that. So my wife's like, well, at least something came out of the romantic couples massage. And so I got a price to pay, which is literally the opening scene where this guy is found dead in a massage parlour.
I think there are some very vulnerable places you can be in, and I think in the next book I've got coming out, the opening scene is somebody having a pee at the toilet, and gents, and
once you've started, you can't stop.
I've actually
hold on.
I've actually read that because Graeme was kind enough to give me that, and it's a brilliant opening to a book.
Okay,
just that first line is brilliant. It's as good. It reminded me of. In The Shining, that first line where Jack Torrance thinks about the manager of the hotel. I won't swear on here, but he calls him a vicious little something. But he's almost got that impact, that first line as well. But it is a really, really good opening line and opening chapter.
Oh, thank you for that.
Interesting.
I'd forgotten you got that.
That's really interesting, Graeme, because the opening scenes to one of my books was a guy driving home late at night, and he had to stop for a pee, and while he's peeing, in the lay-by behind him, a murder occurs. And I was thinking the same thing. It's one of those things where you think, oh my God, what do I do? I can't stop peeing, but there's gunshots going off behind me.
It's inspiration.
I'm going to take the conversation away from this tasteless.
Sorry, I started that. Sorry.
That's all right. I've got a quick question for Paul. You mentioned that you make your notes with your left hand.
Yes, only because my wife's usually leaning against my right arm. Yeah.
I got repetitive strain in my right hand with using the mouse, so I flipped to using my mouse in my left hand.
Oh,
and I noticed that my imagination changed.
All right, that's interesting.
The same thing happened to yourself? Because I'm using a different hemisphere.
No, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a scientist. I don't even think about things like that. I just think it's just that I'm very utilitarian. All I notice is my typing slower. I mean, it's on my phone screen, so you're kind of balancing the thing of the Microsoft OneNote there and just typing away. No, I didn't notice any change in creativity. And often it's just a case of sheer practicality. Yeah, my wife's warm; she doesn't want to move. You know,
wouldn't it be lovely if we could get the same idea? Because they say you use different parts of your brain, whether you handwrite or whether you type. But the trouble is, once you do get the idea out, you can't get it again. So how do you know whether you would have been any different?
Well, it's one of those, you can't go back in time, so you can't. No. Yeah, that's the same with any. You'd have to do a massive controlled experiment where you wrote down 100 ideas with your left hand and 100 ideas with your right hand, and then got someone independent to compare them. Yeah. Blind test.
That'd be a good idea.
We could get funding
anyway.
We could get funding for that. Yeah. Royal Literary Fund. I'm sure they fund that. Yeah.
So we're all. I think most people said they write their ideas down in a notebook or their phone, and then they transfer it to an ideas file in your computer. That's what I do.
No, I use OneDrive literally because I'm lazy. I only have to do it once. It syncs.
Yeah, I use an app called NotesNook that does something similar. It syncs. It's got on my phone. It's on all my computers.
I'm too lazy. I just keep it in the book.
I'm still like Tony. I think I've got a book. But to be honest, with ideas, I think it's usually, no matter what I write in that book, it'll be the biggest idea that I can't put down. The one that keeps slapping me in the face, that's the one I'll start with. So it doesn't matter how many things I write in the book.
Yeah.
It'll be the one thing that I can't let go. That'll be the one I'll have to do something about.
For me, that's the idea that has the honour of moving from my very long list of random fragments to having its own subpage, which then might have 2 or 3 more lines of notes. And that's my planning done. There we go. Let's start writing.
I think a piece of advice for writing your notes is to write the note as if you're writing it for somebody else, because by the time you come around to reading it again, you are somebody else. I mean, in my ideas file, I've got an idea. I obviously wrote this idea down in a notebook, and then I copied it into my ideas file. And it is, and I can quote it in its entirety. Man meets a woman with a name, e.g. Yvonne. And I can't delete that, but I have no idea what it's about.
Are you guys anything like me? I can say, guys, we don't like. My mother hated if you've got a mixed gender room saying, "Oh, how are you guys?" Or when you go to a restaurant, "Hi guys, good evening." Are you anything like me where you get, because I write something and then I get, "Oh, I've got another idea, I'll move on to that." So I've got so many opened things, so many my whips folder is bigger than my completed folder, where I've got, do you work, 2-part question, sorry David, so I'd like to include you as well, whether you work on 2 different things, because I write crime and women's fiction, so I tend to work on 2 things at once. There's a bit of a break, either whether I get to the writer's block, and I do believe it exists, because you don't know what happens next, so I then move on to something else, and hopefully I come back to the original one, but I work on 2 different genres. So do you find that you work on 2 different things because it keeps it fresh, or you have so many ideas that you just keep moving on?
One of the most productive times was when I used to work in theatre, write theatre plays, was when I was writing a comedy play and a serious play. So whatever mood I was in, I had something to write. If I got fed up of one, I moved to the other. But recently, since the pandemic, I ended up working on 7 novels at the same time. Wow. And that is stupid. I mean, it really is. And so I need, all I'm doing at the moment is trying to finish things to clear the decks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the worst I had was actually at the same time, 2020, and I had 4 things going at the same time. And unfortunately, one of them was, 2 of them were about my DI Jimmy Bliss, but one of them was a novella set in the early 90s. And one of them was a book where part of the story was also set in the early 90s. And there were times when in my head, I was thinking of the wrong thing. So this is a young Jimmy, this is an older Jimmy. And that pretty much blew my mind. And that was the point at which I decided I'm not going to do that anymore. But I do tend to write one thing, but sketch out the next thing at the same time. So I'll take a break from what I'm writing, but when I finish that for the day, I'll quickly spend a half an hour on sketching out a little bit more of the next thing coming along. So there's only 2 things now. That's it.
Like it or not.
Get.
Sorry, Eric. No, I've said far more than you have. Go for it.
So that's about as close as I'll get as I might sketch out or outline something. I did, like, at one point I was working on book 3 and I outlined my newer reader magnet, but I will totally either screw things up or get obsessed with the second thing and abandon the first thing. And I'm kind of deathly afraid of that curse of never finishing stuff. And between that and 2 other day jobs, I get enough distractions from the writing as it is.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I have to say I just focus on one at a time. I might move, while I'm while the book's with an editor, I might be then working on the next one. But same day, I'm not going to touch, or the same week even, I'm not going to touch 2 different stories. My brain won't cope with that.
I'm thinking one obsession at a time, I think. Yeah, if I'm doing a book, I'm on that. The only thing I'll take a break for is maybe a quick short story. I can take a break. I can take a clean break from writing the book, and the short stories are usually so different from the book anyway. Generally with characters I don't particularly like. Seems to work quite well with short stories. But that's the only thing I could do. I could not do 2 books at once. That would be too much for my tiny brain to cope with.
We have a question from the chat, Sean McDarby, who was very pleased earlier on that I pronounced his name correctly. But it does. I said it does help that I'm English, but he said even people who live in the same town as him don't get it correct. He said, "Do any of you?" And I know one of you in particular, and I do. Do any of you use different pen names for different genres? If so, how advantageous? And I'm going to add in disadvantageous. Do you find it? For me, because I write crime as Morgan Bailey, I have been writing women's fiction as Rachel Kavanagh, although my name is non-gender specific. I've been writing as Rachel Kavanagh, but the trouble is that you then have to market. And I'm sure if I asked you all, what's your least favourite thing, which I do in the spotlights, what's your least favourite thing about your writing life? It would be marketing. At least it would come up in conversation. So for me, it's having to market 2 names. I forget that I've got a Rachel Kavanagh on Instagram and page on Facebook and so on, because I spend enough time, thankfully Donna Morfitt is going to help me with that, with marketing 1 name. Alan, I'm going to come to you first, because you were who I was thinking of.
Oh, okay, I don't use different pen names for different genres, actually, which is probably a bad thing because I started off writing children's books and then I carried on the same name then for adult books, very, very adult books. So probably I should have, really.
Right.
I've kind of got this. When I switched, I put a disclaimer. So when I switched from Midas, which was my last book, which was suitable for children, into Lucas, which was definitely not suitable for children, I kind of I did it the wrong way. I kind of tried to get around it by putting a disclaimer in the description of Lucas to say, well, if you bought Midas for your child, please do not buy Lucas as a Christmas present, because it's a bit like, I don't know if you remember, if you're old enough, it depends if you're old enough, I'm of the age of having videos as kids, and my parents would rent anything I wanted. It wouldn't matter about the age on it. So it would be a bit like getting that. It would be a bit like giving your 4-year-old a copy of RoboCop to watch. It'd be that kind of ilk, I think. So so I probably should have done it, but I
Yeah,
haven't.
we had this conversation yesterday when we were checking all your video and everything worked, to say that you on reflection you wish you had. But as you say, but the thing is, you have to, if you're just saying in the disclaimer, it's you judge a book by its cover. So if you're writing a book for children, you would hope that the cover would appeal to, it would be obvious. It's a bit like buying a dark novel, a dark cover. Oh, this is likely to be crime, to be something, fairly gritty. Whereas if you're buying a pink fluffy cover, it's going to be, in theory, light and airy. Do any of you write other genres?
I write all sorts of
name?
things. I write all sorts of things. I describe myself as eclectic, or I was described as eclectic. I picked it up, and it does make it very difficult to market because if you liked this book, you might not like that one. Whereas if you write in the same series, people know what it is, and it does take them through.
I contemplated changing my name slightly, but my middle initial name when I wrote my standalone, because it's a thriller and it's not police driven, because I was known for police procedurals, and I thought I could maybe call myself Paul C. Gitcham. Couldn't call myself PC Gitcham because there's lots of very, very good ex-coppers out there writing, and I would feel a bit of a fraud. But in the end, I thought it was too much hassle. And someone said, well, it's not that different. And the police do feature in it. So just keep it as it is and pull over readers. If I wrote a completely different genre, like science fiction or something, I might consider. But I think, well, you'll build up all my readers. Why not bring them across?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I tend to be the same. If I went completely out of genre. So, I mean, I've got two standalones, one which is a fairly dark psychological thing, another one which is more of a mystery thriller. But I also have two, what I would describe as kind of action adventure, shoot 'em up, blow 'em up type books. I didn't think they were so far removed that it warranted a different name. But if I moved completely out of genre, then I'm pretty sure I would.
I think back in the day it was expected more, because Ruth Rendell is her crime, and then Barbara Vine are the more thrillers, aren't they? And so I think it was expected back then that you would have different names for different genres.
Agatha Christie wrote romance under a completely different name. Yeah, and that's I get that. Although these days, the romance and crime, I mean the two, the Crime Writers Association and the Romantic Novel Association, we do a lot of stuff together. There's a lot of overlap. But again, actually, to be fair, people are often using pen names. You don't twig that people are writing about.
And Roald Dahl didn't, did he? He wrote his kind of Tales of the Unexpected, really dark kind of tales under his normal name, and he wrote his children's stuff under his name as well.
Yeah.
I think the argument of having to run two social media people is ridiculous. Which is why I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. No,
apparently Amazon struggles sometimes as well, and I mean Amazon can't link my regular novels to novellas in the same bloody series. They cut them apart, so that killed my novellas.
If you look for my name on Amazon, it's even when I do it, I've got however many 40 something titles. They go, do you mean Morgan Bailey? And I go, so I'm missing a lot of it's something I need to go to KDP support. Beth BB Elson, who we'll meet later in the SFFH panel. I agree with David. For a novel, you have to have an idea that demands to be written. However, in the writing groups I'm part of, we're often asked to write short pieces to themes. It's amazing how many different interpretations there are, and apparently specific themes. Has anyone written to a theme and then wanted to expand it?
I've done exercises and writers' workshops, but not. But I have enough ideas in my writing career to not need to use artificial themes or something.
I have. So my Coventry Writers Group, we set ourselves a homework every month, about sort of 300 words based on a random theme, and I wrote a 300-worder on the subject of, I think it was I can't remember what the actual prompt was now, but it ended up with a guy doing a confession in a confessional, and actually I really liked it, and I expanded it out to about 1900 words, and I've submitted it. I haven't had any luck, but I've submitted it to a couple of places because I thought actually this is a proper short story if I take it past that 300 words. So I have done that. Yeah.
Helen A.A. Abbott asks, which real life, coming to you first, Eric, sorry again, David, I've taken over, just keeping an eye on the chat. And we've got, in theory, we've got 4 minutes. They are all overrunning, so it doesn't matter. Which real life event, if any, has influenced you the most?
Starting with me. For me, actually,
yes, Eric. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Not a real life for me, but real life for my grandfather is what started my first book.
Okay.
He survived the Battle of the Somme. He was on the German side in Mehmet's Wood, which is one of the only places the British actually broke through. And he was a war hero because he knew which way to run because he had laid out the lights in the trench. And he really didn't like talking about it. And there's a famous book, First Day on the Somme, Martin Middlebrook, that you might have heard of, that I was there when the guy interviewed my grandfather. I was a little kid. And that idea, when I was researching my grandfather, turned into like the 3rd scene in my first book. But instead of the British, it was the Martians coming through. And it was that whole idea of what if the Martians showed up on the Somme? You know, it could have been even more bloody. That gave birth to the whole series.
To be fair, though, the great flu came immediately after the First World War. No, wouldn't that have killed off the Martians?
Right. But yeah, I haven't finished the series. I'm taking a break from it. But that definitely.
I mean, if you're going to follow the original source material, yeah.
But, and here again, history podcasts are, to me, they're a treasure chest of ideas. You know, and the way Neil Stevenson does something similar with his books is what I really appreciate.
David, have you written from inspiration from real life?
I have, in the sense that when the pandemic hit, I was sitting on the patio behind me, drinking Pimm's, thinking, you know, this is rather nice.
Yeah.
This is what it would be like if there was a genuine apocalypse. So I wrote a comic story, Dawn and Dave of the Dead, where I just simply replaced the pandemic with zombies. And the zombies home in on people because of their breath. So when you go outside, you have to wear a mask. It's that sort of parallel with the zombie apocalypse and the pandemic.
So they all went to the US and just ate everybody that was whining about the masks.
Yeah.
Did you, talking of lockdown, which these days we tend to try to avoid, but were any of you tempted to think, because obviously lockdown happening, there was then a year later or towards the end of lockdown an influx of stories including a lockdown. Have you done, or would you be tempted to include or exclude anything that took place over, I mean, David has, over the lockdown, whether you think it's overwritten or it's just people don't want to be reminded by it anymore?
I've pretty much avoided it. I've made casual reference to things like distancing, masks, things like that. I've never included it deliberately in anything, even though I kind of probably wrote, 2 full novels during that period, and subsequently. So casual references only because it happened. But yeah, I personally, I didn't want to dwell on it, and I didn't want readers to dwell on it.
I think it depends on the idea. If the pandemic could feature in it because the idea demands that, then fine. I wouldn't put it in artificially just because I felt like it.
Because
I think it triggered some interesting situations you could put people in.
Yeah.
People talk about this idea. I mean, we know tragically domestic violence increased because people were stuck in the house all day with partners. They weren't getting out and about, and I'm sure there's been an uptick in the number of those sorts of crime novels. I actually dodged it without any intention. My D.C. Warren Jones series was running about 2 years behind real time. So the last book in that series just dodged the pandemic. The pandemic was coming, we knew it was coming. The next book, I was going to have the portents, because Warren Jones's wife is a biology teacher, and I can tell you, as a biology teacher myself, by about February, all teachers were sitting there going, "Yeah, we're screwed. There's a pandemic coming, isn't it?" Yeah. So why are they not talking about this on the after 7:30 on the on the Today program? You'd hear it before 7:30 when you drove into work. You never heard it after 7:30 until mid-March. We all knew it was coming. So I was thinking I could have her pre-shadowing it, and then my next series, actually, there was situations where there was references to it, because it's setting around 2021. This is the Fox and Keddard series is coming, but it took so long to write those first 3 books, and there was I did some rewrites and whatnot. In the end, it timed out, and I actually brought everything 3 years forward. So suddenly, then it was a case of, oh, how do I actually justify this person wearing a mask? So I just put another side comment along the lines of, "Oh, they're wearing a mask, were they? Really? Suddenly they're worried about COVID," just as a kind of, just to justify ne'er-do-wells wearing masks for reasons other than public health.
Because these people still do. I go into the supermarket and with health.
Well, they've always done it. If you go out to places like China and Japan, as sheer politeness, if you've got a cold, people always used to wear masks.
I was going to say, when I worked in New York City, I saw many, many, many people from Asia wearing masks going back to like the mid-2010s.
Oh yeah, it was just good manners. But also, I think makes people more aware of the fact as well that, particularly if you've got if you know that respiratory viruses do knock you for 6, which they do for some people. I can understand why people would be wearing one now, because it's the cold and flu season.
We've got -3 minutes to ask one and a half questions. So the half question is for Eric. How did the family end up in the USA?
My grandfather, after World War I, went. He was actually captured by the French, but he made it home around 1920, I think it was, in a tiny little village called Lidelsheim. And Lidelsheim turned into a hotbed of fascism. And he was having none of it. And I think it was after the second time that they tried to kill him that his father said, "You need to get the hell out of here." And he fled to New York City in 1929. My father and grandmother and the other kids came about a year later. They finally got out. So what's going on right now over here, I'm taking a little bit personally.
Yeah.
And final question, another one from Sean. For those of you who have full-time jobs, how do you find managing the time to write whilst balancing jobs and family life?
It used to be easier, I would say. I used to have a job that had a lot of travel, so I used to be able to write in airports, on planes. I don't currently have that type of job now, so it's a little bit harder.
I found my job generated frustration within me and drove me to do more writing. Since I've packed in the day job, I have an issue with everything requires self-motivation. So in an odd way, it's harder without the job.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. When I was working full-time up until the end of 2016, I was always writing, but I would find that a motivation in that the more pressure my job gave me, the more I needed the escape. And so I would, I'd write at lunchtime, I'd write when I sort of late at night when I got home, but I had to write in order to sort of freshen myself up for work the next day. And I found that, I did find that more difficult once I started writing full-time.
Full-time job also means that your days are often more structured. So actually, there's a period you work, and then there's this period when I'll do some writing, then there's this period when I do this, this, and this. And then what I found, because I left the classroom and took on online tutoring and working for exam boards and stuff, that is very kind of eclectic. And now, in particular with my tutoring, many of the lessons are already, because it's online, many of the lessons are already prepared. So sometimes I have to take time out, to a couple of hours out, to write a new lesson. Other times I just tweak one that I've already delivered because it's perfectly good. And so my days are never the same. So actually, you're right. It's that lack of structure can often make it more difficult to put aside the time to write. I mean, you just have to do it, obviously, but yeah, there is something to be said for the structure that a day job gives you.
Yeah, my day job is work from home. I'm a CTO of a small tech company, so there's no structure there. So I can spend an entire day procrastinating from writing and that job.
I'm actually going to name the squirrels out of my window. I'm getting to know them so well.
I'm very conscious of the time and the fact that I'm a moderator and I should be wrapping up. But I like this conversation, so I want to carry on.
I'll end there with Douglas Adams, because I know some of you are SFFH writers. Douglas Adams is quoted as saying, "I love deadlines and the sound of the whoosh as they go."
Yes.
If you want me to do anything, give me a deadline. Oh, whenever you like. Doesn't get done.
No.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, especially David, for moderating and letting me say things occasionally when I could have muted myself or you. So thank you, everybody, and thank you.
I'll butt in and say thank you very much to my panel. And thank you to the audience for listening to us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you, because I've really enjoyed listening to everybody else, because I've said hardly anything.
We had 18 people in altogether, so that's great. Thank you so much.
Grand.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Great, Graeme. I plugged you.
Bye-bye.